So hey guys, welcome to the newest episode of the SaaS Sessions podcast. I'm Sunil. I'm gonna be your host for this episode. So my guest for today, I'm gonna spend a lot of time introducing Mayur Gupta. So currently he's the Chief Marketing Officer at Freshly, where he's leading a team of marketers to make Freshly an iconic brand and drive breakthrough growth. So he's inspiring every household in America to bring a positive change in their lives by eating healthier each week, something that is very important right now. So prior to Freshly, Mayur was the global VP of growth and marketing at Spotify. Prior to that, he has worked with great companies like Healthgrades, IBM, Kimberly-Clark, Sapient Nitro, and HCL. He's also an investor and board of members of many amazing businesses. And well, I could go on and on about Mayur's introduction, but let's hear about him from himself. So, hey, Mayur, welcome to the podcast.
Hey Sunil, thanks for having me over. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it kind of took a long time for us to, actually get on this recording, Mayur, because I think we started talking about this in 2018 December, and here we are in 2020, and the world has definitely changed, but we're still doing the show, and I'm really excited that we could make it happen.
Yes, look, I think it's more of a reflection of my mismanagement than anything else. I have been looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah.
Of course, all the great things you're talking about, but also because I grew up in India and I moved to the US in 2002, but my heart and soul is still very much in India. I think I know about India and what's happening there, perhaps more than a big percentage of people who are living there. So talking to you about stuff in general and connecting with a lot of my friends there is just fantastic. So I'm excited, and I hope to come back much sooner than what it took us to do the first one.
Yeah, awesome. So, Mayur, so about your career, right? So when you started in India, I guess, and you started as a developer, you did a little bit of product management then, and then you went all in for marketing. So can you tell us more about, how this path? So did you choose each of these steps in your career path, or was it something like, that just happened?
Yeah, it wasn't as conscious. I would say it was unconscious and rather just accidental. And so I started as a pure engineer. I was a developer. That was the thing back in the 90s. If you didn't have a clue what you wanted to do in life, you just picked computer science. You at least get a job. So I was part of that segment of kids growing up in India. I had no clue what I wanted to do in life. I think kids out of India are incredible entrepreneurs already. I'm following so many of them, and I know so many of them. I wasn't one of them. So I started there, did everything that you can imagine, worked 20 hours, many 24-hour days, saw a lot of sunrises in the office, both in India and here, as an engineer, as a developer, Java, J2E, and wore all kinds of hats, Unix admin, DB, etc., etc.
Right.
There were two pivotal points, I think, in my career that came. One was I used to work at Sapient, which is now part of Publicis. That's a big Publicis agency family now. So in the mid 2000s, the company Sapient acquired an ad tech product company in Florida. And I was lucky enough that one of my mentors, who's still my mentor, he asked me to become the product lead for that. And that was a pivotal point for me that evolved me from pure engineering to building products for the world of marketing and advertising. So that was my first baby step into that world. The only exposure I've had to marketing until then was as a consumer, all the ads we ever saw.
Right.
So the interesting part was, one, that took me all the way to the roots of marketing, how the world operated, because we were literally building those systems. And back then, the double clicks and the Atlases and Googles were still just entering into the world, and we were competing. The caveat is, of course, they were product companies and they exploded. We were an agency and a service company, just did not have that kind of vision or a strategy to build products. But I learned a whole lot. So that was one. I did that for a few years, ran, some part of the agency, ran a studio, did marketing tech strategy for some big CPGs, Fortune 100s, while on the other side of the fence. So that was one pivot. The second pivot for me came when I finally left Sapient after 12 odd years or so, wearing all kinds of hats. And I joined Kimberly-Clark as their first ever chief marketing technologist, reporting into the CMO, sitting in marketing, but a technologist. And that was a pivotal point for a few different reasons. One, that was still a new thing. The world was still contemplating what marketing and marketing's future and the future of businesses would look like, because we had moved from this concept of digital marketing to marketing in a digital world. We all were going through a big transformation in our lives where digital wasn't a thing anymore, right? That just became the life, we were leading. And of course, look, right now, even if you restrained yourself for all these years to live a digital life, you are in it now, fairly and squarely. So that was a big moment for me. And one, going on the other side of the fence, so I'm in services and agency world on the brand side, was one. Two, representing a role and a function that just did not exist in the industry. So the marketing technology function, or the role of a chief marketing technologist, was very, very new. I struggled a lot in those 3.5, 4 years at Kimberly-Clark, but I learned a lot. I grew a lot. And those were the most transformative moments and years of my career. And the fundamental shift that experience brought for me was, I think the first 12 years I did well at Sapien and grew a lot. And of course, that was a foundation. But I don't think I had a perspective. I don't think I had a point of view that was mine. That exposure to the outside world when I left the place I knew so well, that finally gave me a perspective. I finally had an opinion. I finally stood up for something. And the perspective shift and evolution that happened in my professional life also trickled through to my personal life, and what I did there impacted professionally. And since then, it's been incremental baby steps into the world of marketing. Spotify was fascinating. And coincidentally, the world of marketing itself has been evolving every single day since early 2000. I just happened to be in the right place, at least for me, in the right place at the right spot, and being mentored by some incredible people.
That's really great. And so, Mayur, you always talk about this having this perspective, right? So why do you think it's very important to have this perspective as an individual who is just starting out?
Very simple. See, in life, if you don't stand up for anything, if you don't stand up for something, you'll fall for anything. And that is so true for business, for your professional life as well, just as much as it's true for your personal life. And it's so important to have a perspective, because, see, that's what people are looking for. That's what people are looking from you as a leader. That's what people are looking from you as a team member, as an entrepreneur, as a founder, as anything. People are looking for you to have a perspective. Whether you fail or succeed in an idea is mechanical. That's purely mechanics. It's a question of a lot of different things, and you're bound to fail. When you try different things, if you're not failing, then there is something fundamentally wrong. If you're not failing that as a company, as an individual, then you just aren't trying enough. You're being too safe. So that in itself is a problem. But what people are looking for when they're hiring, when people are looking for when they're joining you in your team, is, are you somebody who has a point of view? Are you somebody who has a perspective? Or are you just flowing with the winds? And when I say that you need to have a perspective, I don't mean you've got to be stuck with your perspective. You've got to keep evolving. But at any given moment of time, you need to have your own North Star. If you don't have that, you are a Ferrari with no steering wheel. Beautiful engine, great speed, but you got no clue where you're headed, or where you're taking your team, or where you're taking your company.
Right. That's a really interesting analogy. So, the other kind of companies that you've worked with, since you have made that pivot from a technical person into like a product and then into marketing, right? So I think Kimberly-Clark was something where you started into marketing. So from all these years, from Kimberly-Clark, Healthgrade, Spotify, and Freshly. So I believe all these companies have consumer-facing products, right? And so was this planned that you are going to the consumer-facing companies, or this happened in the flow? Again, so you were in the right place at the right time, or was this planned for you?
Well, it was a combination of a few things. Of course, I was selecting the jobs, so there was very clear, conscious choices that I was making in terms of the organizations I want to work on. In terms of verticals, I've been all across the board, simply because I don't think when you're thinking about growth and transformation and building businesses, the vertical knowledge matters a lot for certain kind of roles. But in this world, that is less relevant. because at the end of the day, whether you are in fintech or product or entertainment or travel, or healthcare, ultimately every business is trying to solve a human need and a human problem.
Right.
You're trying to solve inefficiencies in your daily life. And I also feel, look, direct to consumer businesses or B2B, look, at the end of the day, there's only one person who's paying. There's only one person who's ultimately surviving, dying, or living, and that's a
Mm.
human, that's a consumer, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
machines don't consume product or services. Machines are a means to that end. Ultimately, whatever you're producing, there is a human being at the end. The reason why I happen to be working in more direct consumer facing ideas, because I think I'm the most uneducated and the most misfit marketeer. So the most natural way for an engineer to tell a story and market something is if I can relate to it as a human. So
Yeah.
otherwise, I really don't have a shot at convincing you to buy. Back in the day, I remember when I was interviewing for management schools in India, one of the panel members said, sell this pen to me. I think that's a
Yeah.
atypical question in management schools. And
Yeah.
I had no freaking clue. And to be honest, if you ask me to do that today, I'll probably fail even right now. And so I think for me, what helps me as a marketeer on paper is things that I believe I can relate to in my own life, and most of them happen to be things that we all would love to use, or things that are solving inefficiency that I'm seeing in my life or lives around me.
So that's a really great perspective to look at, right? And it's I think it's definitely important. And so yeah, last year when we were talking, right, about you were just joining freshly as the new CMO. So did you also carry this same perspective when you joined freshly, right? And when you convert that into marketing, right, you were hired as the CMO, so you're the marketing leader in the company. How do you make your team also have the same perspective? Obviously not the same, but how do you get the buy-in from your team?
Yes. Well, first of all, I perhaps would not want them to have the same perspective. It's,
Yeah. Yeah.
you bring leaders who are way smarter than you are, and they are experts in what they do. And I think if you bring, when you do bring innovative leaders, who are motivated, who are excited, they should share your values, they should share your mission, but they should bring their own unique perspective to solving that problem, to getting to that mission.
Right.
In fact, they should challenge the perspective that you may have as a leader, as a team. So one, I learn a lot from them, and that's the kind of team that we have built. And it's a journey, it's a constant evolution.
Yeah.
And what I look for is, see, this is where I think I kind of learned after a few years the correlation between, or the difference between values and culture. So oftentimes I hear a lot of organizations, a lot of people say somebody is a cultural fit or was not a cultural fit. I think that's a misnomer. You actually shouldn't be looking for cultural fit. You want cultural ads. You want people who are diversifying your culture, who are evolving your culture,
Right.
who are bringing that diversity, because diverse thinking, diverse background, diverse education, diverse experiences bring different ideas to solve the same problem.
Right.
And sometimes we now measure diversity in terms of gender ratio, which is totally is only one small element of something much broader that we are all trying to solve. So
Right.
that's one. But then the values as an organization, your values as an individual, is something that stays much longer, not forever, because your values may evolve as well. But your values should not change and evolve with every new individual joining your team, right? Because that's your substance, that who you are as an organization. So ultimately, the way I solve problems is very simple rules: bring people who are 10 times smarter than you are in what they do, and my job
Right.
as a leader is to break down the barriers and to connect the dots. I'm a dot connector, then, and
Right.
being an engineer, it kind of helps. The system thinking kind of helps me do that. And then two, you learn every day. You learn from the mistakes you make. You also learn from the mistake that other people make.
Great. So when you were at Spotify, right, and then you joined freshly. So obviously these are very two different companies, right? So as you said, culture is different in these companies. So both companies would have different values. Both companies would have different perspective as a whole. So there's a lot of learning and unlearning that needs to happen when you join from Spotify to Freshly. So was it necessary for you to unlearn some things at Spotify as well? Maybe you evolved from whatever things you had at Spotify. Obviously, you can unlearn some things, and some things you can evolve in terms of culture, values, and perspective, and so on. Did you see this happen to yourself when you moved from Spotify to Freshly?
See, I think, look, the process of unlearning and learning is ongoing, right?
Yeah.
Whether it is core principles, or it is technology, or it is anything else that's happening around you personally and professionally. So that's a constant. But what I like to think about more is, what is it that I learned in a one spot at Spotify that I'm trying to bring on every single day at Freshly, and for however long I'm here, how do I continue to build on it? So I think you said a couple of things. One is you asked about the mission, and was it unlearning and learning? I don't think so, simply because a lot of these organizations that at least I've been, and a lot of others where I've not been, the mission and purpose somewhere is very connected. These are building blocks. These are concentric circles. It would have been challenging, to be honest, if I was working on an idea where the mission was very contradictory to what I'm working on now. For example, if I was selling something for years, which was extremely unhealthy, but a very lucrative business, where, by the way, there are Fortune 100 companies out there doing that. And now I suddenly came to Freshly, whose core mission is to break down the barriers to healthy eating, because we firmly believe that's how you get the best out of your own life. How do we make you feel great, beautiful, and incredible within the way you are? And how do we solve that with high, meals and product that is healthy, convenient, tasty, and economical? That the four legs of that stool that just has never happened. But in my world, Spotify has a mission which wanted to create a marketplace for creators to make a living, and for the world's population to get access to something incredible, ultimately to change your life. And I think this is another angle, but with a very similar, directionally similar mission and purpose, to create a platform that breaks down the barriers, that we all have.
Yeah, I think if it's like a bird's eye view of changing people's life, it would be the overall underlying statement for both of these companies. What would you say?
Yes, at the end, yes, the purpose of both of these companies, and many more, right? It's just that which part of the human life, whether it's entertainment, it is health, it is functional aspect of what we need in our daily life as a utility, or education. At the end, a lot of these things are addressing, different aspects of our daily life.
Right. And then tying this learning and unlearning things from like a broad company level to specific to marketing and growth, right? So there are a lot of campaigns, or there are a lot of activities that you would have done at Spotify, where the underlying mission is the same, that changing people's life, though in a different way or different factor. So when you switch jobs from Spotify to Freshly, now the overall perspective is the same, like you're changing lives at Freshly as well. So do you think the unlearning and learning in terms of marketing is also there, like specific to very role in two different companies?
I would, I think, to be quite honest, for a lot of these functions, whether it's marketing, growth, just running a business, I think 80 to 90% of what you do is pretty consistent. It's a framework, it's a blueprint that you put in your head, or you put it on paper and you apply it. Because, for example, whether you're in healthcare, or you are in CPG, or you are a marketplace, the challenges that most organizations are facing. And by the way, also, whether you're a Fortune 100, or you're a Fortune 1000, or you are a startup, in Series C, Series D stage, most of them are struggling most of them are struggling with the same challenge, which is fragmentation, which is creating silos within the operating model, still with an intent of delivering an experience which is connected, but underlying operating model is extremely broken. They're all struggling with a broken tech ecosystem, which leads to a broken data ecosystem, which ultimately leads to a broken understanding of the consumer. and then you solve it in bits and pieces. Everyone is struggling. Every business, regardless of size and scale and function or vertical, is struggling to balance short-term and long-term growth. It's struggling to balance the impetus on performance marketing with truly mid to long-term, path to build an authentic, honest, brave brand. And so the core principles that drive success and the core challenges that are impediment to that success are all very, very consistent, 80 to 90%. That's why when I'm sitting on my board seat, talking to a whole different company, I'm applying the same principles. It's exactly the same challenge and the same bottlenecks that you see in most cases. Every now and then you'll have a very unique scenario, which is very business specific, but most times it is pretty consistent. Hence, you've got to be able to build these blueprints that you apply, the playbooks that you apply to different businesses, and you consistently keep unlearning and learning because the world around us is changing so rapidly.
Got it. And this makes me think about an article that you wrote, right? So in this article, you discuss about how brands can thrive in a consumer-driven world, and how do you reposition marketing as a growth engine. So is this 80 to 90% that you're saying, which is consistent, is this the same growth engine are you talking about?
Yes, marketing has gone through so much transformation in such a short time. Every function has, including engineering and IT or tech, a different nomenclature that mean different things now compared to what it meant even 7-8 years back. But I think within the C-suite on that table, marketing is, relatively speaking, still the youngest function, right? Marketing back in the 70s and onwards was only a function that existed in CPGs, in consumer packaged good companies, right? That CMO for a product company never existed. The CMO for a tech company back then never existed. But what's happened with marketing and growth is I think about that in three kind of macro eras, right? So era one was, let's say, the 70s onwards till the 90s or the 2000s. Is I call it the era of the madmen, the age of the madmen, where it was a Midas touch, right? You touch anything, turns into gold. And all marketing was about was throwing some nice creative ads on television, and people saw it and they went to the shelf and they bought it. And it worked because consumers had no option. There was no technology, there was no data. There were 3 or 4 limited set of channels. There was no traceability. So it was mostly unaccountable marketing. And you just had to be creative and make people laugh. And everybody was saying, I'm unique just like the other person, just like the other brand. I'm whiter, I'm stronger, I'm stretchable. And it worked. Brilliant. But that set the tone for what marketing was. This black box had to be cool, a big spender, a cost center, and it works sometimes. I don't know by how much, but it works. Okay. Then came the second era, which I call the age of digital confusion. It was a decade of digital confusion from 2000 onwards, where technology just, there's a proliferation of digital tech, marketing tech, ad tech. Data became table stakes. Marketing became accountable. We all thought first digital was a bolt-on. So there was marketing, and then there was digital marketing, right? And all the big organizations said, oh, we have to do digital. And very soon we all realized, well, it wasn't digital marketing. It was marketing in a digital world to somebody who was living an inherently digital life, right? And that's when most organizations now that you and I know don't use the word digital anymore. That's just the DNA. That's who we are. That's who the companies are. So there was a confusing era. And then came the biggest pivot, kind of 2008 or so, when Facebook started to come at scale, iPhone was launched, and this notion of growth at all cost, because there was so much VC money coming in at pretty much zero cost, that mindset changed, that no matter what you do, you have to move the needle. And marketing over-indexed on this side of growth and performance marketing, where it suddenly became from totally or somewhat unaccountable to now becoming totally accountable, where it went to the extreme where we all kind of have lost the soul and the purpose of marketing, where it is all about same-day gratification. It doesn't matter how you understand me as a brand. It doesn't matter whether you understand my core offering, as long as you come in my ecosystem, right? As long as I acquire you. Now, because that's a short-term focus, I don't even care how quickly you leave. So you may churn, you may not be a high retained user. I really don't care as long as you come in, because that's all that matters right now. So
Right.
what's happened is we've gone through these kind of three phases, and this is where what we are all going through right now with this global crisis, which is disheartening and unfortunate. But one thing that it has done, it has shook all of us in a good
Yeah.
way. It has challenged us to and taken us all the way back to the roots of what marketing should have always been, which is empathetic, which is
Yes.
honest, which is true, where we need to have conversation, where we need to build that trust through transparency, and not be just about the functional value, not be just about the offer, not be just about driving an action from you and
Mhm.
creating fear. So I think that from a marketing and growth standpoint, first of all, I don't think these are two separate things. I don't think marketing and sales, not that I don't think, I believe marketing and sales is no longer separate. If the purpose of marketing is not to grow, is not to drive revenue, not to drive sales, then you shouldn't exist. So that era is over, where marketing and sales were two different teams, two different functions. Even that era where marketing was brand and growth was growth is gone as well, or for the most companies should go away.
Mhm.
Hold your marketing function accountable for growth, but it's not just quantitative growth, short-term growth of your CAC, your user growth. It's growing your brand, it's growing your user base, growing your user value. It's not an either or, it's an and. Now, the pace at which you invest in one versus the other is dependent on where you are in your journey as an organization. If you are
Right.
in early stage, mid stage, late stage.
Totally. So this makes me think. So we have come across all these different eras and different phases of marketing, right? We are in currently the growth era. So do you think that the growth era is going to be there for long, or it's going to change into something different? A few things that comes on top of my mind is something which the world is seeing now. As you said, like everyone is doing growth, everyone is doing marketing, but they are more empathetic, they're more honest, and they're more true, transparent towards their consumers. And the one thing that they're trying to do is, give value, right? By being empathetic, by being true, by being honest. But the main crux of all of this selling is obviously every company wants to sell, every company wants to make money, and that's what marketing and growth should drive. But they should also drive something which is much more important in this world as of now, which is value. So people are only going to buy things as of now which gives them value. So is the growth marketing kind of on the verge of maybe changing into value based selling or something like that?
Well, first of all, that's a great question. And I would say the impetus on growth should never go away, right? Like if you're, yes, we all need to have a mission and a purpose, but I can vouch, I can tell you, if your business is not doing well, you are not going to change the world, right?
Right.
So at the end, we all have to figure out ways to run a business with strong unit economics, because without that, you don't have the oxygen to change the world. You don't change the world on paper.
Right.
So that's first and foremost. What we are talking about though is growth should not equate to only short-term growth.
Right.
Value should not equate to only functional and utilitarian value, right?
Yeah.
And what marketers do shouldn't just be that short-term functional, price-driven value. What we
Right.
have to add on, so we don't have to lose the impetus on that. What we have to add on top of that is that emotional value, right? We
Yeah.
have to add the mid to long term, because more so because the consumers of today, the
Mhm.
Gen Zs, the early millennials, they are so conscientious about what they do in their life. What brands do they associate themselves with, right?
Yeah.
In most countries, you are no longer just blindly buying something because for certain products, yes, but for many products that we use in our life, we're asking a question: do I want to be behind that brand? I want and the consumers today, with so much choice and so much access to information, they can see through. So
Yeah.
you, as a brand, you can no longer have a facade and just say, oh yes, this is who I am, because they will see through your actions. So the one thing that I would hope, I don't know if it will happen, but one thing that I would hope becomes a new normal is the focus of brands and companies to drive both short-term and long-term growth, is to drive both functional and emotional value, and not either or. Because if you only index on long-term growth as well, on the other hand, or you only index on emotional value, you'll run out of business, or you will probably not even make a business. And in the absence of that, again, you really cannot accomplish your mission and your purpose or change the world.
That's really interesting. I totally accept the one line which you said, which could totally relate to myself, is also something which is so if any brands that I want to be associated to, so I would definitely think twice or maybe think 10 times in choosing those particular brands. It's not only brands that we use as consumers but also as businesses. So is it same for both of the worlds, like the consumer focused world and also the business world, or is it just the consumer focused world?
It's No, I think it's across the board. Look, at the end of the day, who's the decision maker? It's not a machine.
Yeah,
Right.
totally.
Even for even for what you're buying for your business, ultimately the decisions are made by human beings. And as long as humans continue to think and operate like humans, we will make humanistic decisions. Right. When humans change and decisions are made, the end decision. So obviously somebody may say, well, what do you mean? The whole world of AI and ML is about machines making decisions. Yes, in the middle, right? But at the end, they're making those decisions ultimately for something that's been consumed by humans. And until that happens, which is until you and I are alive, we'll have to make decisions that are more humanistic, and we can't ignore that. But one thing I just want to piggyback on that, Sunil, is the word brand is such a misnomer. Well, almost to a point where it's become a stigma. But when I'm not going to go into the definition of a brand because there's some fantastic definitions out there. But as a consumer, when I think about the word brand, it is not just how you look and feel. In fact, it is far away from how you look and feel, but it is everything else. It is who you are, what you stand up for. And when I think brand, I don't think marketing. Marketing perhaps is just the orchestrator of the journey of building a brand. Every iota of an organization, every being in an organization contributes to building that brand. Because look, Nike would not be Nike if the shoes did not reflect what they were saying they were going to do and change. Right? Totally. And if the product itself sucked, it didn't matter how brilliant marketing was or how many athletes were talking about that shoe if the shoe sucked. So at the end, I feel a lot of times we feel, oh, marketing is the owner of the brand, or marketing is the one responsible for the brand, and my product roadmap is going to be here. That's such a misnomer, and that's when marketing gets on an island, and that's what marketing and marketers have to fix. Where we have to ensure that one of our biggest roles within an organization is to ensure that we are the brand orchestrators, but everybody is a brand owner. Everybody has to become a brand advocate. Now, all we do is drive the process to define what the brand is, what our foundation is, but then every single person is ensuring that whatever they're doing, they're using their brand foundation, their mission and their purpose as a guardrail. Because if your product roadmap doesn't reflect your mission and your purpose, you're missing the point.
Totally. And referring back to your analogy that you shared earlier, is marketing the driving wheel inside the Ferrari?
That depends on the business model. In some cases, especially in CPG, marketing is a growth engine. But in an online tech product, perhaps product is that growth engine. So who is sitting on the driver's seat is very organizational specific, and to some extent, the business vertical and the nature of the product and the channels that you operate in. What I would say, though, is no matter what that is and who's driving, growth ultimately is a cross-functional outcome. You can't take a group of marketers and say, grow the business. You can't take a group of product people, say, grow the business. You can't take a group of analysts. Ultimately, whichever way you shape it, everyone different. There are different models out there, right? So in 2007 or 8, Facebook established the growth team, which sat totally separate from everybody else. But who did the growth team have? It had growth marketeers, it had analysts, it had product people, it had engineers, right? Because I believe that back then, Facebook was not able to change the core functions or the mindset of those core functions. They said, you know what? We're going to create a separate unit that will be reflective of every single thing we need, which pretty much represented every single team the company had. But if I were to do it all over again, why would I not fix the root cause where
Totally.
make marketing think like growth, make product think like growth, and then you make them work together for a single outcome, which is growing the business.
Totally. So that's an interesting conversation. Well, we could go on and on talking about all these exciting and insightful things with you, Mayur. But since we are, sticking to time here, I have three lightning round questions for you. Yeah. So you can just answer whatever is on top of your head. So first one. So what do you know about your work now that you wish you would have known sooner?
That the world changes right on you when you think is going great.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. So yeah, and so what's the biggest professional failure taught you?
To never give up, never be defeated, and stand up for, no matter what happens, stand up for your beliefs.
That's amazing. And what's the number one thing that has helped you shorten your craft's learning curve?
My craft's learning curve, I think is becoming a better listener.
That's interesting. I think so. Everyone can take that as, you should start listening to more of Mayur's interesting conversation that he's had on different podcasts and different videos, and he's written some amazing articles. Yeah, great. So yeah, Mayur. So any parting piece of advice for the listeners?
No, I think we discussed a lot, but perhaps one thing I would say that I have learned is that we are all on our respective journeys and respective set of challenges. We have our own dreams and ambitions. But one thing that I tell my team, I tell myself every single day is, no matter what you do, no matter how many battles you're facing and what ideas, don't forget to have fun. Enjoy the
Yeah.
process. Enjoy the hard days just as much as you enjoy the good days, but because you're going to have both.
Amazing. So that's a great takeaway. So thanks a lot, Mayur, for taking time for coming on the podcast and recording an amazing episode with us.
You, thanks, Sunil, and hopefully one of the future ones we can do it in person in Bangalore or Pune.
Definitely. I'm greatly looking forward to that. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.